Whew. Hello everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of The Invasion, the third story of the sixth season of classic Doctor Who, starring Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor. The Invasion is a 46 story overall, it's 8 episodes long, and it's written by Derek Sherwin, which is actually based from a story by Kit Pedler. Of all the 8 episodes, only episodes 1 and 4 are missing, but back in 2006 they got animated, and the Invasion was the first missing story to have the animation treatment. So, and this is then the evasion is also the second to the last missing story to have missing episodes. So we don't have a whole lot left now. Hooray! So the plot of the invasion is as follows. Investigating the disappearance of an eminent scientist, the Doctor and his companions follow his trail to the London headquarters of International Electromatics, a global supply of electronic equipment run by the formidable Tobias Vaughan. Teaming up with the newly formed United Nations Intelligence Task Force, UNIT, under the command by Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, it soon becomes apparent that Vaughan is working to his own sinister agenda. As Cybermen invade cities all over the world, can the Doctor convince Vaughan to help him defeat him and defeat the plan for global domination? In my opinion, The Invasion is a really good Doctor Who story. I mean, it's widely loved by many Doctor Who fans. I like it as well, but to be honest, I don't love The Invasion. I mean, when I first watched the story back early last year, I just watched Tomb of the Cybermen as well, and I went to The Invasion thinking it was going to be another epic like Tomb of the Cybermen. To be honest, I probably might get a bit of flack for this, but I don't really. The Invasion didn't really live up to the hype, to say the least. I mean, I know a lot of people actually I know some people actually do prefer the invasion to Tomb of the Cybermen, but I think it's the other way around for me, and the division didn't really live up to its hype. And I think if it was a seven-parter, because I think episode 3 was a bit irrelevant, I'll get on to the reasons why I think so later on. But if it was a seven-parter and they actually included some bits and pieces in it, I would have liked the story even more. But I must say, the production of the story is fantastic. However, the script was really good. It was very easy to get through, and it was very easy. And there's no bad stuff in it. The plot was really good as well. It actually takes place after the events of the Mind Robber, as when the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe wake up in the TARDIS, which was just reforming after it was being blown up. And the direction by Douglas Camfield was really good. I liked the location filming, and as it was around some parts of London, and I really liked how they were able to get the Cybermen to come out of the sewers, and then we had some of them climbing down the steps of St. Paul's Cathedral. And I love the incidental music by Don Harper. He's very different to Dudley Simpson, and it was a very good fit for this story, to say the least. And this is the first story in which the ever so brilliant Terence Dix was involved in, and this is the first story in which he's the scriptwriter. And Terence Dix, I must say, he did very good stories, and his scripts were really good. And it's a shame he died last year, and but he's a very credible part of Doctor Who, to say the least. And this story had some very iconic scenes, and as I mentioned before, the Cybermen emerged after St. Paul's, and this was actually recreated in Dark Water in Series 8 of New Who. And I also like the scene where the Cybermen attacked the unit soldiers in the sewers, and it was also a frightening scene as well, as we see the Cybermen emerging from the darkness. And I'll say before and I'll say it again, the black and white actually helps capture the scariness behind it. And another scene I liked was the helicopter rescue in episode 4. Even though it was animated, but I still liked it, and it was pretty cool. And if it existed, it would have probably been like brilliant. So now on to the acting aspects of the invasion. I would say the acting was very strong in the story, and definitely one of the best of season 6. Patrick Troughton was very good. I would say he did his best. One of my favorite scenes was when the Doctor was dodging the blast from place to place. I think it was in episode 8. Yeah, it was also a very funny scene as well, and he was just like, and I also like the episode 7 cliffhanger when he was confronting Vaughan after he lost control of the Cybermen. I think Vaughan himself was a bit dazed. I think the cyber planet blasted him, I think, and then the Doctor was like, "Do you really want to be the rule of a dead world?" And the episode just ends right there. So Jamie and Zoe, they were really good. I mean, Jamie does his best in this story, even though Fraser Hines went on holiday towards the end of the story, and He doesn't actually do a whole lot in the second half. I mean, the first half he's with the Doctor and he's actually trying to help the Doctor rescue Jamie and Zoe, and he actually indirectly causes the cliffhanger for episode 2, which was a bit funny as well. But he doesn't actually do a lot in the second half when the Cybermen take center stage. And I also like the scene where the Doctor and Jamie actually entered Watkins' flat and started eating a sandwich that was on the floor. I think that was improvised again. So Zoe, on the other hand, she was awesome, but she definitely really shined in this story. And despite her getting kidnapped by Isabel, with Isabel in episode 3 because Wendy Padbury went on holiday. No, actually episode 2 because she doesn't appear in episode 3 because Wendy Padbury was on holiday. And but when she's rescued, she bounces back and she does a really fantastic job. And I liked the scene where she was with the armed forces, the military, when they were trying to fire a missile at the Cybermen's invasion fleet, and Zoe actually proved that she could find the results of how long the impact would be with before they do, and she actually does. Yeah, even it does come a bit cocky from Zoe, but she bloody well deserves it because hell, we haven't really had a companion that can actually do that, to say the least. And I would actually say that the invasion is one of Wendy Padbury's best performances. In addition, we have the return of Lethbridge Stewart, and he's now the Brigadier. So now he's no longer the Colonel. I'll be referring to him as the Brigadier now, which is a lot easier now. He's the Brigadier of the newly formed United Nations Intelligence Task Force, UNIT for short. And the Brigadier is actually better written in this story than he was in the Web of Fear. Yes, the Brigadier actually does do a lot in the Web of Fear, but I didn't like how he was introduced as this whole mysterious character, and then it was pretty much dropped like midway through that story. And here and I did find it a bit odd, but in the invasion, the Brigadier proves that he's a capable leader and he's a lot more reliable and an effective ally for the Doctor. And I'm glad we get to see more of the Brigadier in the John Pertwee era. And I like how the Brigadier is now pretty much a very iconic character for Doctor Who. And I would say Nicholas Courtney did a very good job in the invasion. So speaking of UNIT, this is the first story that I actually featured in, and this is pretty much basically the first unit story. And they had a good introduction of the Brigadier, and this is also the first appearance of John Levine as Sergeant John Benton. Benton doesn't actually do a whole lot, but he does get a good introduction, and no one would really think that he would become such a major part in the Third Doctor's era. You know, if you watch the invasion, he doesn't actually show up until in the Ambassadors of Death, which is the third story of the seventh season, and he does a good job helping the Doctor in the Third Doctor's era, but he does actually do a good job in this story as well. So I would say that Unit got a good introduction here, and I liked how they play a part in this story and how this story actually helps set up the groundwork for more Earth-based stories for Doctor Who in the next 5 seasons. So now on to the side characters of the invasion. We had Professor Watkins, first of all. He was the guy that disappeared and he was actually being forced to work for Tobias Vaughan. His character was initially created because I think the writers actually wanted Travers to come back, but obviously Jack Watling was unavailable. And obviously they wanted Anne to come back as well, but the main reason they didn't because Jack Watling was unavailable. He was alright, but he was pretty obvious. It was pretty obvious that he was a Travers copy. We also have Isabel Watkins. She's the niece of Watkins, and Jesus Christ, I found her character so irritating. I mean, one of the reasons that actually put me off the vision because of this girl, because she's just so bloody annoying. I mean, they could actually put Anne to take Watkins' place, so they actually made much more sense, to say the least. But the reason why I don't really like, not because she's annoying, she actually does cause this. She actually, her and Zoe unintentionally caused the deaths of a unit soldier because Isabel wanted to take pictures of Cybermen in the sewers, and the Brigadier actually told her not to. But then Isabel, thinking that the Brigadier was just being a misogynist and stuff like that, even though he was actually concerned for her safety, he wasn't actually being misogynistic in any sort of way at all. And then obviously when they get to the sewers along with Zoe, he actually gets Jamie to come along because Zoe thought Jamie was on his side. So I think Zoe in her fault as well, because she pretty much just taunted Jamie, saying, "Oh, you can't let us do this. You won't let us do that," and then they all go to the stores and order, and then all hell breaks loose, and they almost get killed by a Cyberman. And then obviously afterwards, Isabel pretty much humbles, and she's just there for some for and she just and I think the whole purpose of Isabel is just she actually wanted to take pictures of the Cyberman, and that's pretty much a whole purpose of her story. And she actually, I mean, yeah, she does get good pictures, and she actually does get a contract or something like that towards the end. But they could really use the character a lot better, or they could probably have used Anne or something. And we also have Captain Jimmy Turner. He's a nice bloke. I liked him, and he has a bit of a romance with Isabel. And I think the expanded media actually mentions that they actually got married afterwards. And man, I actually like the little romance that they had because it doesn't really eat too much into the plot. And we also have Packer. He is Vaughn's henchman, and I'd say he's actually my favorite out of all the side characters. Not the Brigadier and so, but I actually liked him because he's another mischievous villain. He's very brutish. He's also very brutish, and it actually helps his character and actually makes it work. And I whenever Vaughn wanted him, he'd be like Packer, and then Vaughn would be sorry, Packer would be like, "Yes, Mr. Vaughn," and then on that screen of his. It's a shame he died though, and we don't actually see him die. I think there was a scene when Vaughn wanted Packer, and then all of a sudden we just see a Cyberman come up to the screen. So I would say all the side characters are decent, and they all did a really good job. So on to the villains of the story. First of all, we have the Cyberman returning for a fifth encounter with the Doctor, and unfortunately, this is the last time we see the Cyberman until Revenge of the Cybermen, which is the fourth Doctor story, and that is 7 years after the invasion. And they get a brand new design, and I really like the design. It was a lot better than that design they had in the Weed in Space. And as you can see here, this is the new design, and I would say this is actually my favorite Cyberman design for a time. And they also get new voices as well. They sound similar to the new Who Cybermen, and I like that. And the Cybermen really were good here, but they could have been better. But I honestly do, for the only reason I say they're good but not impressive, like let's say the Tomb of the Cybermen or even the Moon Base or 10th Planet, because they felt very underused. The Cybermen, they didn't. I felt as if they were underused, and they were just basically henchmen for Vaughn until at least the last two stories, when they decided to turn on Vaughn and just work on their own agenda. And I think their plan was a bit odd, which did involve putting some of Earth to sleep for their invasion or whatever their plan was around the end. I think they pretty much just had this pacing sound which put everyone to sleep, and that was just it was a bit odd, and it felt a little bit weak as well. I would have actually liked to see the Cybermen actually raise havoc on the streets of London and causing death and destruction everywhere. That would have been a lot more effective, to say the least. And we also have Tobias Vaughan. He's the head of International Electromatics, and he's a very dastardly villain. And he's played by Kevin Stoney, who played Malvik Chen in season three's The Daleks Master Plan. And Kevin Stoney is a brilliant actor, and I think, and he was brilliant in this story. And even though he was very over the top, even though it should have been toned down a bit, and the only reason I like the character, he's so evil as well, and the evilness comes across as stoic as well. And he's a very stoic character. He doesn't really show any emotions of at all. Like the Cyberman, for instance, and then you obviously notice something's not right with him because the Doctor mentions in episode one to Jamie after meeting him. The Doctor was saying that man was not blinking as much as a human should possibly do, and then there's something not right with him. And I like that as well. And obviously, Vaughn was the main villain, and the Cybermen were just merely henchmen, and I didn't really sort of like that, to be honest. I mean, I did wish the Cybermen would have actually gotten a bit more, and obviously I think this is the first time we actually see the Cybermen actually working with someone, even though they actually had their own agenda, to say the least. Used to actually put. I think they probably wanted to use Vaughn as a pawn to try and at least take over the world or something like that, but But I think they pretty much spent a lot more time on Vaughn than they did with the Cybermen, to be honest. Until when the Cybermen actually got their own chance to actually do stuff. So as I mentioned before, this is the first animated story of Doctor Who, which was done back in 2006 by Cosgrove Hall. It was decent. I would say the animation looked a bit off, especially some of the characters and the Doctor looking a bit old and tired, and Jamie were looking a bit high and doe-eyed. But seeing it, this is the first animation, I'll give it a pass. And it's a shame they didn't really do more after any more animations after the invasion. I think they probably closed down afterwards. But I know they did Scream with the Shocker 3 years before the invasion was released on DVD. I haven't really seen the Scream with the Shocker animation, but I can't really judge on that. So on to the thoughts of the invasion. My biggest issue of the invasion is the length of the story, other than the characters and some parts being removed, but the length of the story is my main issue, and I do feel there was a lot of filler in the beginning, as I feel like episodes 1 to 4 was just really slow paced. I think they really took their time to at least get to the point, because I really feel like as if they could have at least done it in a better way instead of just like not taking their time. I think they could have just like jumped straight into the point and just not having to like drag things too much. I mean, yeah, I like the scene where Zoe actually blew up the machine in episode 2. That, for instance, even though this is probably her establishing character moment, when she blew up the computer using her mind, yes, it was funny, but was it really okay? I would say it was needed, but I think they really shouldn't have focused on it too much, to say the least. But this is where Zoe was kidnapped. I mean, especially episode 3, I did feel it was a bit unneeded, because obviously Wendy Padbury is on holiday, and I thought episode 3 was just to solely compensate for her going on holiday. And I would say that the episode 3 could have been merged with episode 4, to say the least. And as I mentioned before, episodes 1 through 4, the first half of the story was a bit slow, and it was a bit slow, and it could have been. They could have at least got rid of some parts and put some episodes together, like episodes 1 and 4. And obviously, my other issues was how Jamie was used in the second half, and how Isabel was just there and didn't really annoy, and she just annoyed me. Episode 3 didn't take a huge chunk of the story. I mean, I think we'd have gotten some bit of more parts of the story that have been featured, like the scene of Watkins being rescued by Unit. I mean, they had to remove that scene, and they pretty much had to do it off screen, because I think I think it was, I'm not sure if it was a budgetary issue, or I think they didn't have that much time, and I felt like that should have been a really big part of that story, and with it being off screen, it wasn't really good at all, and it shows that some scenes were prioritized over this important scene. I do feel that the rescue scene of Watkins would have been really important. I think it would have been epic as well. So to summarize this review, the invasion is definitely one of Charlton's best, definitely one of the best of season 6, but unfortunately, it's not one of my favorite stories. But I do appreciate the invasion for introducing Unit and a new concept that will be used throughout the Third Doctor era. So I'll be giving the invasion an 8 out of 10. But to be honest, if it wasn't for Unit and some other characters, it would probably have been like a 7 or something. So my next review will be The Crotons, the first story to be written by one of, if not the most important writer of Doctor Who, and his name is Robert Holmes, so please look out for that. Thanks for watching this review. Please let me know what your thoughts of this story, the animation, and let me know what you think of this review. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Until then, see you later.